Barcelona just won La Liga. Again. They lifted the title, beat Real Madrid when it mattered, and reminded everyone that they are still one of the biggest football clubs in the world. Barcelona officially became La Liga champions, winning their 29th league title after an El Clasico win over Real Madrid. But here's the strange part. Barcelona did not win this league because they suddenly became financially healthy. They won it because their football recovery moved much faster than their financial recovery. The academy produced, the coach gave the team structure. Expensive players finally made sense. And Real Madrid did Barcelona a favor by having one of those seasons where the inmates were running the asylum at the world's richest superclub. So no, Barcelona did not literally win La Liga with no money. They won it with restricted money, future money, borrowed time, and a squad built around survival. Which is even crazier. This is not a normal champion story. Usually, when a club wins the league, we talk about tactics, goals, star players, and big moments. And we will talk about each of those. But with Barcelona, the real question is bigger. How does a club that has sold chunks of future income, fought La Liga wage limits, delayed payments, refinanced debt, left its own stadium during a rebuild, and lost Lionel Messi because of financial restrictions, still win the league? That is the contradiction. And honestly, it is why Barcelona are one of the most fascinating football business stories in Europe. Because most clubs either look rich and play well, or look broke and struggle. Barcelona somehow managed to look financially trapped and still become champions. By rights, that should not happen, but it did. To understand how Barcelona got here, we have to go back to what made them special. Barcelona's modern identity was built on something most clubs dream of and almost never achieve. They had an academy producing elite players. They had a football philosophy most football fans could name within 5 seconds. They had Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Piqué, Puyol, Dani Alves. They had Pep Guardiola, and for a while it looked like Barcelona had discovered football's cheat code. Not just winning, but winning beautifully. That matters because success can make a club smart, but success can also make a club arrogant. And this is where, in my opinion, Barcelona's financial story really begins. Not with debt, not with the virus, not even with Neymar leaving. It begins with the belief that Barcelona were different, more than a club, more than a team, almost a level above normal football. When you can win like that, it becomes very easy to assume the future will always look like your present. The academy will always produce. The superstars will always stay. The revenue will always grow. The fans will always forgive and keep buying. And Messi will always save you. That last one is important because for years, Messi was not just Barcelona's best player. He was Barcelona's financial camouflage. Here is the twist. Barcelona's crisis did not begin because they had no money. At one point, they received more money for one player than any club had ever received in football history. Neymar left for 222 million euros. That should have been the perfect reset. A chance to rebuild properly. A chance to strengthen the whole squad. A chance to build the next great Barcelona team. Instead, it became the moment Barcelona started trying to buy back an identity they had lost. And that is where the story gets messy, so to speak. When Neymar left for PSG in 2017, Barcelona had a problem. Everyone knew they had money. And everyone knew they were desperate. They had no choice but to replace one of the best attackers in the world. That is a terrible negotiating position. You are immediately marking yourself as a soft touch. You are not getting a bargain. Barcelona then spent huge sums on players like Ousmane Dembélé, Philippe Coutinho, and Antoine Griezmann. To be clear, I don't think those signings were dumb in isolation. Dembélé was extremely talented. Coutinho had been brilliant at Liverpool. Griezmann was a world-class player. The problem was not simply talent. The problem was fit with the squad, timing, wages, and strategy. Barcelona were buying names, but not rebuilding the machine. And this is one of the biggest lessons in football economics. Spending money is not the same as solving problems. Sometimes, throwing money at a problem just makes the problem louder. Barcelona lost Neymar, but the deeper loss was control. They were reacting emotionally. They were trying to protect status. They were trying to prove they were still the fabled Barcelona. And the bills kept piling up. For years, Messi papered over the cracks. That's not meant as an insult to Barcelona. That is actually the biggest compliment you can give to Messi. Bad squad balance. Messi could still decide games. Questionable recruitment. Messi could still create goals from nothing. Declining structure. Messi could make chaos look like a plan. And because Barcelona still had Messi, the commercial machine still made sense. Sponsors still wanted the association. Fans still watched. Tourists still came. TV audiences still cared. But this created a dangerous illusion. The football club was not as healthy as it looked. The finances were not as strong as the revenue suggested. And Barcelona were becoming increasingly dependent on a player who was both their greatest asset and, financially, one of the biggest costs in world sport. Then, in 2020, the virus arrived. But to be clear, this virus did not create Barcelona's problems. It simply lifted the lid on all of them. This is the moment the Barca myth broke. Barcelona were still famous, still huge, still globally adored, but suddenly the money stopped moving like it used to. Matchday income disappeared. Tourism disappeared. The stadium was empty. And the wage bill did not disappear along with it. That is when the football world discovered something uncomfortable. Barcelona were not too big to suffer, but they were too big to adjust quickly, and that difference nearly changed everything. The second story starts with a picture nobody expected to see: Lionel Messi leaving Barcelona. For Barcelona fans, that was emotional. For football fans, it was surreal. But for this channel, it was also something else. It was a financial confession. Messi leaving was not simply a legend moves on to pastures new. It was the moment Barcelona publicly admitted that the accounting numbers no longer worked. La Liga's financial system is strict because it works to prevent club bankruptcy. It sets a squad cost limit before clubs spend, and that limit includes wages, bonuses, annual transfer fee payouts, and agent commissions. That matters because Barcelona's problem was not just whether they could afford a player's salary in a normal sense. It was whether they could register players under La Liga's spending rules. And when your greatest ever player cannot be registered because your wage structure is out of control, the romance is over. This is where I think people sometimes get Barcelona wrong. They were not some tiny club with no revenue. They were still a revenue giant. But there is a difference between being rich and being flexible. Barcelona had money coming in, but too much of it was already spoken for. On player wages, on debt, on deferred payments, future commitments, stadium costs. It's like earning a high salary, but already owing most of next month's pay before it even arrives in your bank account. You aren't poor, but you are trapped. So, Barcelona reached for what became famously known as the economic levers. In 2022, the club approved the sale of up to 25% of its La Liga TV rights income and part of its merchandising business to improve its financial situation and increase its spending limit. That phrase, economic levers, sounds very sophisticated, almost elegant. But the simple version is this: Barcelona sold parts of future income to create money now. Was that smart? Honestly, I think it was both brave and dangerous. Brave, because doing nothing might have meant years of decline. Dangerous, because future income is supposed to belong to future Barcelona. That is the trade-off. They did not escape the crisis. They converted the crisis into a bet. And to be fair, the bet helped them stay competitive. Players could be registered. The squad could be strengthened. The club avoided becoming a purely nostalgic institution. But the cost was future flexibility. That is why the title is so interesting. Barcelona did not win because the financial mess vanished. They won while managing the mess. So how did Barcelona win La Liga? First, youth. When you cannot spend like a normal super club, your academy becomes more than tradition. it becomes your club's oxygen. Promoting youth players up to the first team is not just about romance. It's economically powerful. Lamine Yamal is the perfect example of why Barcelona's academy, La Masia, still matters. In a world where Barcelona could not simply spend their way out of trouble, the academy gave them something priceless: elite talent without an elite transfer fee. That is priceless when your squad cost is under pressure. Second, coaching. This team had structure, pressing, intensity, clarity, roles. And this is where football quality can beat financial diligence in the short term. A well-coached team can make limited resources look bigger. A badly coached team can make unlimited resources look completely confused. Ask Real Madrid. Third, Barcelona still had elite talent. Let's not pretend they won the league with 11 volunteers and a GoFundMe page. This was still Barcelona. There were still internationals, stars, and high-level players. But the difference was that the team finally made more sense. Players who previously looked awkward suddenly had roles. The system gave them context. And when a system works, the balance sheet does not need to score goals. Fourth, Real Madrid helped. And I say that with respect, mostly. Madrid's financial power remained huge. In March 2026, reports put Real Madrid's La Liga squad cost limit around 761 million euros, compared with Barcelona's improved limit of about 432 million euros. To call that a gap is ridiculous. That is not a gap. That is a financial chasm. And yet, Barcelona still won the league, which proves something important. Money gives you options. It does not guarantee clarity of direction, singularity of purpose, or success. Real Madrid had the resources. Barcelona had the story. And this season, the story won. But here is the real question. Is this Barcelona's comeback? Or is it just a beautifully managed delay? Because the financial issues have not simply disappeared. Barcelona have still had to restructure major financial obligations. In 2025, the club sold 424 million euros in bonds to push back repayments for the Camp Nou renovation, shifting repayments to start later in 2033 and run all the way through to 2050. Now, that might work. A rebuilt Camp Nou could transform the club's revenue. More matchday income, more money from hospitality seats, more commercial opportunities, more global appeal. But it is still a bet. Barcelona are betting that the stadium of the future can pay for the mistakes of the past. And maybe it can. That is what makes this club so compelling. Barcelona are not dead. They are not finished. They are not some ruined giant of European football. They are champions. But they are champions with consequences. And that is the perfect modern football story. Because in today's game, success is not just about who wins the trophy. It is about what that trophy costs you in the end. Barcelona won La Liga with no money because they still had something money cannot instantly buy: academy talent, identity, pressure, history, and a coach who made all the pieces fit. But they also won while carrying the weight of the terrible financial decisions of the past. And that leaves us with the question that will define the next era of Barcelona. Is this the beginning of a real recovery? Or did Barcelona just win the league while pushing the bill further into the future?